Hey folks, Dr. Mike here with Renaissance Periodization, Hypertrophy Myths number 3 today, doing the same rep pyramid during your warm-ups. That's a strange myth. What the hell does that even mean? Before I get going, we're going to talk about what the myth actually is, talk about how it might make some good points, definitely talk about how it makes some bad points, and not so great points, and a little bit of real talk to get our sense of where we are in space about this whole thing. So the myth is that you should train like this. You pick a rep target, let's say sets of 10 or sets of 5 to 10, and you pick just like one actual rep number, let's say 10. And you do it for all of the warm-ups while linearly adding weight, and then you do that weight, at least some of the sets, for the top sets when you get warmed up. So here's what this looks like. For example, on the leg press. Let's say you want to use 585 for at least one set of 10, and then maybe sets of less than 10 after, or even drop sets or whatever. 585, 6 plates on a side for the leg press. Those are your top sets. This is how, in this style, you would warm up for it. You would do 135 for 10, 225 for 10, 315 for 10, 405 for 10, 495 for 10, and then finally your first work set of 585 for 10 begins. After that, you do a few other sets, let's say a set of 8, 7, and 6. You're done training, and you go have sex in the locker room. Hell yeah, brother. It's fun. It's fun to do in the locker room. In any case, all that aside, you'll notice that it's 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 the entire time. Should it be like that? Well, maybe there are some good reasons, and here they are. First of all, warming up is really awesome, right? And warming up nice and slow is much better than the opposite of rushing it. This is very nice and very slow, so at least it does that well. And also downsets, sets that are not super maximal, your best performance ever, slightly off of your best, can also be helpful. So we could say that 495 for 10 warm-up, that last warm-up you did, probably is hard enough to where it has some hypertrophic value. It does actually drive a little bit of muscle. On the other hand, there's some bad things. Problem number 1 is a time problem. Warm-ups are generally not stimulative of growth in advanced lifters, so all of this time you spent warming up, if you could have condensed it to the appropriate amount of time, you'd have saved yourself a ton of time of non-growth promoting, non-beneficial lifting. So number 1 problem is this is a giant waste of time. Problem number 2 is this is a waste of energy. Energy you could have been driving a stimulus with. How, if you condensed a warm-up to something more rational, which I'll show you in a bit, stop doing 5 sets of 10 before your first set actually began, condensed it to maybe 4 sets of declining reps, you would save a lot of energy, which means that 585 for 10 wouldn't be a 10. At the same reps in reserve, it might be 13, 14, or 15 reps. You're so energetic at the end of a proper warm-up versus so much more tired at the end of one of these crazy long extended warm-ups, sets of 10 and 10 and 10 till the cows come home, that you actually end up getting more out of your first and second and third working sets because you have a higher performance relative to your ability to perform, and you get very close to muscular failure as opposed to systemic failure. We're just so fucking tired of doing sets of 10 that you just can't do any more than 10 reps at 585, right? You essentially don't want to continue to warm up after you're already warm. You want to warm up, and when you're warm, get into the sets that matter with as much energy as you have. But you're pissing away energy on sets that, as we learned, do not stimulate much, if any, growth at all. And lastly is a problem of cumulative fatigue. Warm-ups have a very poor stimulus to fatigue ratio. They don't fatigue you a ton, normally, but they don't stimulate you hardly at all. However, in these extended warm-ups, I'll put it to you this way. Let's go back to the example. 130, if 585 for 10 is something you can do, let's say 2 reps in reserve, that's how strong you are. At the end of all this, 135 for 10 doesn't fatigue you hardly at all, doesn't stimulate you either. 225 for 10, it's not going to fatigue you much. Oh, it's okay to do. Definitely doesn't stimulate any growth either. 315 for 10, definitely some fatigue, not much growth stimulus because it's like 20 reps in reserve. 405 for 10, for sure fatigue. Again, not much stimulus. 495 for 10, maybe a little bit of stimulus, but a ton of fatigue. So those latter heavier sets, still 10 and 10 and 10 and 10, those confer a ton of fatigue. And that is independently a problem with energy, which you won't have enough energy to train hard right after, but it's also a cumulative fatigue problem. If you're always doing these ascending sets of the same number of reps with more and more weight all the time, then you're just adding a ton of fatigue to every session of your program. And thus, cumulatively, your fatigue will skyrocket much faster, maybe after 3 weeks of accumulation rather than 4, so that you could have had one extra great week of training kind of every month that instead you're doing just bullshit warming up that is, again, not stimulative, as that one last fresh week absolutely would be. So, real talk, you got to learn how to warm up properly, which means in a descending fashion. Here's how it would look in this example if, well, no, not if. I modified it in all the proper ways. So let me just read off the screen here. Shut up, Mike, and read off the screen. So here's an example of how to do this right. Same setup, same exercise. 585 for reps is our goal at the end of this on the leg press. 135 for 10, got it. 315 for 8. Because you don't fucking need to do 225, man. That's like the body weight squats. If you weigh 225, which if you're leg pressing 585 for reps, you probably do. 135 for 10 to just get really easy into it. 315 for 8, I promise if you can do 585 for 10 plus, 315 for 8 is not a fucking big deal and you can just go right to it. The rest of this we're actually being really careful with. You only maybe need 3 warm-ups before getting to 585 for sets of 10 plus. But we really took our time. This is the extra careful version, so you could even do much less than this. 405 for 6. Notice it's not 10 anymore. It's 10, then 8, then 6. 495 for 4 reps. What you're getting out of 495 is, here's the thing, you're already generally warm. Physically, your tissues are warm from all the other warm-ups. You don't need to do 10 reps to get the nervous system adapted to that amount of load, which only takes a few reps. Those are called potentiation reps. You just need a few of them. 4 is more than enough. And because we're being extra fucking careful, just to really drive home a point, 585 for 2 reps, rack, rest, and then go into the work sets, just to really get adapted to that whole thing. Because this is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 warm-up sets. The other was also 5 warm-up sets. It didn't have to be. We could have just done 3 and been totally fine. Fine to be extra safe 4. Fine to be super, super safe 5, just so the comparison is good. But because the reps descend, you're getting all the warm-up, all the potentiation, all the readiness without hardly any of the fatigue, any of the time pissed away, and any of the energy loss that will end up getting you shittier results. And because I'm trying to be very accurate with this example, you're more likely to get something in 585 like 15, then 13, then 11, then 9 reps, and you're getting way more reps on the first and even second set of this example because you're not tired from 1 million fucking warm-ups. You've had a great workout without any of the fluff. The thing is, people do this kind of stuff, the 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, all ascending, I think mostly just because it's thoughtless. And I don't even mean that in a mean way. They just never really thought about it. You know, like, there's all kinds of cool tricks to learning shit and that saves you time. And here's one of them. So please do it. And of course, to keep the example similar afterwards, definitely sex in the locker room. Again, why would you get rid of the best part of your training plan? You meet people in there. They look at you. You take your clothes off. They're like, what are you doing? You're like, it's a locker room. And they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. But I don't know how to say this, but you are just, and you're like, yeah, it's just me, you know, but did you want to, like, I don't want to, but did you want to? And they're like, let's go in the bathroom stall. And that's every Tuesday for me. I'll see you guys next time.